Hi, I'm Susan from the Tailored Expression Studio, and I'm here to share with you my technique class I did recently featuring the Clarity brushes. So let's get started. This is the first class I'm going to show you. It really gets down just the basics of working with the Clarity brushes. The Clarity brushes are made out of a fine synthetic fiber, and they're so fine that it's so nice and makes such a beautiful blend. And the taper that's on the brushes makes it so that you can get into a lot of nooks and crannies with them. The brush set comes with 4 different size brushes, this one being the biggest, the smallest, but there's a total of 4. And I love them. I keep mine in a specific color, so I don't wash them. You can wash them with soap and water. They are like a makeup brush in the fact that there's so many fibers, they take a little bit to dry. So I try to keep mine with a color family. Like this one would be my blues, my greens, my purples, but that's kind of the basics. I keep them that way. That way I don't have to wait for them to dry between projects. So the main gist of them is just to learn to swipe, and they will make it look like you've been color blending for a long time. This is kind of a comparison that I did to show you you can get the same blend that you have always gotten with your Ranger foam applicators, but with the Clarity brushes, it's so smooth, it just looks like you've been working at it, and it makes beautiful background with not a whole lot of effort. So it is a lighter look. You have to keep applying and applying to get a darker look with the Clarity brushes. Whereas with the foam applicators, you can get a darker look faster, but you do have to be careful not to get all these lines. But that's what I would compare this product to. It just makes it a lot easier, makes you look like a pro very quickly. So this is it. Like I said, this is a class we're going to start with, and I'm just going to start with the background of this to start with. I like to take my handy dandy scratch paper that I use all the time, just put down a little bit of adhesive. I put down the base of what my card is going to get stamped on. And this is our Granny Smith ink. And I use mine in just a swiping motion. Just go over my ink pad, and I always go off just once. And what that does is I feel like the little bits of ink that gets trapped on the end of the bristles just takes off those harsh dots that you first get. So just one little swipe in each direction gets them off. You don't have to necessarily glue this down. I just do because I like it not to move, and I don't have to worry about having my fingers holding it down. I just swipe back and forth, and I go from one edge of the paper all the way off onto the other edge. I don't usually start on my paper like that. I go off from the edge over here and then back off the other side. So, and you can keep applying to make each of these layers as dark as you would like. The other cool part is I only used 3 colors on this card, but it looks like I used 5 because you get these beautiful blends in between. So the next color I'm going to use is Cookie Monster. And I picked my favorite color to be my biggest brush. All 4 of the brushes work exactly the same. You just have to, the smaller one obviously covers less space. So I put my favorite color with the largest brush. So, and this is Cookie Monster. We're getting a little more of a darker green in between the 2 of those. Makes for a beautiful background. I always say it looks like you worked very hard to blend. You really didn't. I apologize, there's something in the paper. We'll cover that up when we put our stamp on it. And this is Plum Punch, so we're going to get a really pretty purplish indigo blue between the 2 where the Cookie Monster and the Plum Punch meet. This will come down just from the top just a little bit so I get that dark edge. But you don't have to do that. It's just depending on how you like it. I'm going to go back just a little bit with this Cookie Monster just to make those 2 come together a little bit better. That's the main gist of these brushes. There's lots of different fun things you can do with them, but that's the main thing, is that it makes it look like you worked really hard to blend your background. And the brushes just make it effortless. So I'm going to stop there. My sample's a little bit darker, but you just have to keep building up the color. I used our stamp set called Discover Your Wings. And I like to use the Misty when it comes to these big stamps like this, because if you don't get a full black image the first time, it's really great to be able to go back and do it again, layer it up. Make sure my magnet's not hitting. So I took our Oreo ink, inked up the Discover Your Wings. And this is one of the reasons why I love my Misty. These big stamps, you can use them and get a lot of good pressure on them. And that is really nice. It stamped really well, but just for a more bold black look to it, I like to, that's why I love my Misty. I get to stamp it again. So I have my magnets on there, it won't move. And especially if you were doing mass production, this is nice too, because then you just drop your paper right in there every time. Isn't that pretty? Comes out so dark and crisp with them being able to use the Misty. We'll set that aside. So that's my main panel of my card. In class, a lot of people were super excited when I taught them this. I've been doing this for years. I am not in love with liquid adhesive, so my favorite way is to cheat. I laid our stitched rectangles right around that panel, that white panel, and I take my foam tape and I use it to hold them both together instead of having to figure out a different way to adhere it. Skip one little step that way, so that gets it in there. The sentiment is from the stamp set Come On Get Happy. I'll use that again in this video, but that's the thinking of you from that. And the little butterfly is cut out of vellum, and it's from our Inflight Overlays. And I adhered that down there. I put a little glue right under in the middle of the body, and then I covered it up with the Nuvo mousse on the top, just because vellum always shows through. It's the Banner Stacklets 2 that is, the sentiment is on. If you've never used Nuvo, I am in love with this because you can make enamel shapes, dots, wherever you want them to be at. And the main trick with them is just to set it down and go straight up with it, and you'll come up with a circle every time. If you need to flatten them out, you just tap on the back and you'll get a perfect little dot every time. But straight down, straight up. And this is the one that's called Silver Lining. It's one of my favorite because it just kind of looks silver. Tap them from the back and they'll flatten out. The Nuvo drops take about 24 hours to dry, I would say, before you were going to mail them off. But that's our first card. This is a next set of cards I'm going to show you. It's mainly showing you the Clarity brushes with embossing folders. Again, they make beautiful blends in the background, get a little bit more use out of your embossing folders. And this one was a big hit in class. I've always been in love with this embossing folder. It's called Prairie, and then the Confetti one too. Makes for great backgrounds with not a lot of work. So first thing I did, I'm going to show you this one first, the balloon. First thing I did was I took just a panel of sugar cube and I embossed the Confetti embossing folder on the sugar cube panel, and I took our lemon meringue, and again I'm using 3 colors. You see up here are the 3 colors I use. But you get 5 colors in the end. So I took the lemon meringue, and you can do whatever order you want. I'm just going to go ahead with my lemon meringue through the middle because I want to make sure that I don't drown that color out. So I'm going to put the lemon meringue probably on a good half of my card panel so that I have a good blend and get that orange to come through and green with the color combinations I'm using. And the cool part with the Clarity brushes is it hits everywhere, but it really hits your raised areas. This technique though, you definitely use a lighter hand than we did on the first card, because mainly I'm wanting to just catch the raised areas. I don't want the whole thing covered, and I don't want all the recessed parts to be so dark. So again, I'm swiping on from one side like on my scratch paper, all the way off to the other side. This is lemon meringue, and then when I come in, that should be pretty good. When I take my Lollipop and I go over the lemon meringue, I'm going to get an orange tone without having an orange ink pad. So again, I'm doing the swipe off thing. If you can see all those little darker dots, that's what I'm trying to get rid of a little bit. And again, like I said, a much lighter hand than I used on the first card. I'm kind of going over that yellow so that I get the orange, that new color to show through. And it's good to go back the opposite way and not just always going in one direction every time, because then you catch the raised parts coming from the other side. So that gives me a little bit of a lollipop. And then if I go with the Cookie Monster into the yellow, I get a green tone. I just think this is so fun. It makes such a fun birthday themed background. And one more use to add a little life to those embossing folders that we all have. This one's called Confetti, but it's super cute with even the sprinkles and the streamers confetti or embossing folders that we have. So that's my background for this card. It's super easy, and then you can focus more on other elements to your card. This, I used our cutting plate. That's called Up, Up, and Away, and it comes with the balloons that I used for with the pattern paper. I used the Rainbow Brights pattern paper to make the balloons. And the happy birthday is just a sentiment that's out of our Another Year Older on our flag panels. And that just got adhered behind my main cutting plate there. So that was that card. And this one, a lot of people really enjoyed in class. It might not be the way that you think that I came up with it. I took just, again, my main white card base, and I took our Build-A-Scene clouds, and I cut it out of just like typing paper, whatever, just a thin scratch piece of paper, because you don't need it for this card. You just need the template. Laid it down, and this time I am going to use our Tim Holtz Broken China Distress Ink, only because at the end of when I'm all done, I am going to watercolor a little bit with it. And Tailored Expressions inks are a dye-based ink, so they don't watercolor as well. So with the Tim Holtz ink, I can watercolor in some of these flowers a little bit. But again, I took that piece of typing paper, cut out just a template, and I'm gonna go opposite of what I said before, because I want there to be a dark line from these clouds. So, oops, I let it move. Back up. I just hold it in place. You could use a temporary adhesive to adhere it down, but let's go over a little bit. I don't want it super dark. I'm just trying to get the hint of some clouds in the background so that you can see it. You could either cut out another template or just flip your template over so that your clouds just look a little bit different. And then again, I'm going to do the same thing. Brushing up, going over. Again, it doesn't have to be dark. It's very light, just gives the idea of the clouds in the background. And then I'm going to take it to emboss it. And I took my piece and I put it in the embossing folder. The one thing to, kind of as a tip, is that if you see the Tailored Expressions logo looking up at you, your raised part of your cardstock is going to be coming up at you. If it's flipped the other way, you're going to have all your image that is getting embossed going downward. So you want to definitely put your clouds in so you can see your clouds, and you should be able to see the Tailored Expressions logo. Then all of these prairie grasses popping up at you. So with that, I took, and I don't need to watercolor with this, so I used Taylor's Granny Smith. And again, a very light hand with this. And I took a little bit of the Granny Smith, and I'm just going to swipe back and forth, and it's going to catch just a little bit of that prairie grass. You see it catching? I think it's pretty, kind of effortless. I even kind of went up in the clouds, if you see that I'm doing that, just to put a little bit of color in the background, because when you look off in a distance, you're not going to see a flat line. You're going to see green grass, probably for a while unless you're in town, but kind of trying to get at the idea of prairie. So that gives our grass green without coloring in each stem. And then I'm going to go back, and how I got all that color on the prairie grass was I took the Distress Ink in Broken China, and also the Distress Ink in Gathered Twigs, or whatever brown you have. They all work. Oh, this one had green on it. And I picked up just a little bit. I always test. That's why I love my scratch paper. I always test off to the side to make sure it's not too dark, because it was really concentrated right away. And then I can color in all these flowers. You can go as crazy or as little as you want with this. It's kind of up to you. But that's how I got all the color on all my cattails and whatever. Ooh, I just colored the wrong thing. How do I do this? This is for my cattails, the brown. Luckily, this was just my practice. This is my finished card, but that's how I got the brown and then the blue on all the prairie grass. The butterfly, again, is from that same one I had, the butterfly overlays, and the Come On Get Happy is the sentiment. So that's our second setting of cards. This is the third card we're going to make. I'm going to show you how, if you do some masking and use your Clarity brushes, you're going to make a background that people are going to wonder how you did that. So for this one, I took stamped mask paper from Ink-a-Dink-a-Doo, and I cut out the candles from our Make-A-Wish stamp set. So I just took, I know there's 4 candles, but I just took 3 of them, cut them out of the mask paper, and when it gets cut out, you're going to have a blue backing. That's the part that gets peeled off, and then this is our mask for this card. I love this paper because it's super forgiving. You do not have to worry about this ripping your paper when you go to pull it off. It's my favorite mask paper. It is not good for reuse because it is such a low tack product, but it's so good for that purpose that you don't have to worry about it leaving residue or ripping your paper when you go to pull it off. So I know it's probably hard to see on camera, but there is my 3 candles to mask it off. And again, same technique that we've been doing. This time I'm going to use Lemon Meringue and Cookie Monster, but we'll get that blend in the middle to make it look like we used a green, but we didn't. Take this. And again, just going to lightly brush. As you see, I'm going up quite a bit because I want a green blend somewhere in the middle. Again, I do like to go up from the bottom. It gives that little extra hint of extra color along the edge. Swipe some of that off. It gives my yellow. It's such a soft, beautiful blend it gives to the background. No lines. I don't have to worry about any streaking. These brushes basically work with any ink. I've used it with dye-based ink. I've used them with pigment-based ink. The only thing is if I use pigment-based ink, I do rinse that out, or at least wipe it on a wet baby wipe or something. But I've been using a lot of dye-based for these cards, and it works just fine. And then my Cookie Monster. You'll see with the mask kind of the same thing that we had with our embossing folders, that it kind of gets caught on the mask, which is a cool look. I'm going to show you that in my final card, how that is something you can take to your advantage. It gives you a cool, kind of a cool background too. You can build up this color as light or as dark as you want it to be. And still, like I said, I do the swipe off just to get rid of some of that concentration that's at the end of the bristles. Some people in my class asked if you could use these with the oxide ink. I don't see why not. I just got my oxide inks today, so I haven't had a chance to play with them, but I don't see why they would not work. You can also pick up your paper if you want a real concentrated edge and swipe, and it's such a soft look. I like that little extra. And here's the fun part, the golden part, I think, because when you peel it off, whatever mask you use, it's just like, surprise, it's beautiful underneath. Gives a look that people will wonder how you did that. And I'm going to take mine, get my garbage out of the way. Take mine and add our graphic greeting birthday over the top. Again, I'm going to use our Misty. I just love that. Just in case it's not as dark as I want it to be, I have a second chance to fix it. Adhere it down with the magnets. Use our Oreo ink. Give it a good smush. It looks really good, but like I say, if the Misty, it's there. I can re-ink it. I can do it again. Gives just that much more crisp of a look. Optional, you don't have to, but see, so much darker, so much more vibrant, that second stamping. That's one of my favorite things about the Misty. So that is that. And I took our stitched scallop edge die is what I used out of Oreo cardstock to make that. And just took a little bit of twine and tied it around the middle. And you can see too, this was just with one stamp of the Oreo ink and this is with a second. It sure makes it a lot darker, but this is just fine if you don't have the Misty. But if you do have the Misty, that you can get such a darker, bolder look. So that's using the stencil brushes with masking. You can also achieve the same look by clear embossing. So this is a very similar card, and I used the balloons to stamp and emboss them in clear first. Oh, I screwed up because that's not right. I said it wrong.
It's okay, you can start over.
So that is using our the stencil brushes with masking. So the possibilities are endless. Whatever die you have, you can make into a mask. Also, same theory behind it. I used clear embossing for an emboss resist technique, but the only thing you have to remember to do for this is to stamp your graphic birthday first. Then you would stamp your balloons, clear emboss over them, and go over with your Clarity brushes. The one thing I did find with dye-based inks and the Clarity brushes is it stuck a little bit to my clear embossing. So you either want to take a dry kind of baby wipe to it, or the distress inks I found did not stick a lot to the clear embossing. But that's another way to make another look of how did they do it type deal. Or you could have done the balloons and mask with a mask. So just another option for you, another way to look at that. And finally, I have a bonus for you. We did not make this card in my class, but it was an idea I had after my class was designed, was to take our cutting plates and use them as a stencil. You can take Taylor's cutting plates and cut your own stencils with window sheets, and that works great. The one thing to remember if you were to do that is if you use a light color, some of your ink does tend to pool up on top of the acetate. So if you're going to go from a light color to a dark color, that's the better way to do it, because if you go from your dark color and then try to put yellow over the top, you're going to pick up some of that ink that might be sitting on top of the acetate, and you'll get a green color that all of a sudden you'll be, where'd that green come from? It's because it's picking up like the Cookie Monster that might have been on top of your window sheet. So just make sure that you either clean it or you start with your lighter color first before you move on to a dark. But that's if you use a window sheet or a piece of acetate to make your stencils with. I chose to use our cutting plates and cut them out of cardstock. I just used sugar cube because I plan to use both of these pieces when I'm done, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I took sugar cube and I cut out the cutting plate, and I'm just going to tape it down just on a couple of sides. I would normally too, when I was at home, I sprayed the back of it with a temporary aerosol spray, but you don't have to do that. Just make sure you tape it down. Depends on how many little parts you have that could get pulled up when you're brushing over it. This one I didn't need to. So I'm gonna take, and I'm gonna show you how I did this one first. So I used a yellow, Cookie Monster, lemon meringue, and lollipop. So again, I like to start with my lightest color because I feel like otherwise I kind of cover it up. So I always start with my lightest one. And I always go way more than what I think I want to see yellow of, because then I get the blend in the middle. And again, like I was saying at the beginning of this video, the brushes come to a point which makes it really nice that you're gonna get even color down in these little spots without any effort. This is the way the brush is designed. So again, I swipe off, and we can always come back if I decide I want more color on that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of Lollipop. These are a little bit darker colors than what I used in the sample card, but you can use whatever colors you would like. Just going to swipe back and forth. And then move on. I always try to close my lids of whatever color I'm not working with, because I have way too many times gone to the wrong color and then I kind of mess up my brushes and I gotta get them kind of cleaned off. So I always try really hard to make sure that I swipe off, and then I make sure that my lids are closed for the colors I'm not working with. Look, I've already got my yellow kind of disappearing, so I gotta stay back here a little bit. Now, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna stop where I'm at here. With this one, I went ahead and taped it down. The one downside to taping it down is you do have this line. So if you would use one of those adhesive sprays, that's the temporary, you could use edge to edge, and that's what I did in my sample. But for this one, to make things easy, I just taped it down. And then you could either trim that off or tape it on one end, work, and then tape it on the other end and work. But then you get both of these, and they make a beautiful background, both of them. So like I used this one, all I have to do is add a sentiment to it. That was this one. This one is the background piece, and I just added a quick hello to it. I did the same thing with our cross cutting plate. And this one, again, I had that white line, so I trimmed it off. So it's a little bit smaller than the original cutting plate, but it's beautiful. And then this one is the background part that you stenciled onto. So those were cards I did not show in class, just a little extra bonus. But this way you get 2 cards out of 1 bit of effort of making this. So I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.